It happened on a quiet afternoon. In a peaceful mountain village where everyone knew everyone, and everyone feared one thing. A dog. Not just any dog, a massive German shepherd named Bruno, known throughout the village for his uncontrollable rage. People crossed the street to avoid the house he guarded. Children whispered stories about him as if he were a beast from a fairy tale. And then one day, a little girl, barely 10 years old, blind since early childhood, heard the commotion. Villagers were running, shouting. Bruno had gotten loose. But instead of running away, she walked toward him. With no fear, no hesitation. She stretched out her arms and hugged him. Gasps filled the air. Someone screamed, "Stop, Lena. He'll bite." But he didn't. Instead, what Bruno did next brought an entire village to silence. And what happened afterward? It would change everything they thought they knew about fear, healing, and love. Nestled in the mountains, surrounded by thick pine forests and winding dirt roads, was a quiet little village where nothing much ever happened. Everyone knew each other. Children played in the dusty streets. Doors were left unlocked. It was the kind of place where people still waved at every passing face. But there was one corner of the village, one house no one walked near. A faded old fence, a rusted mailbox, and behind it, him. Bruno. The massive, black and tan German shepherd with eyes that seemed to burn through anyone who dared make eye contact. He lived with an old man, a retired officer who barely left the house. And Bruno? He was known for his bark that shook the windows. He was known for lunging at the gate whenever someone walked by. He was known for hate. No one really knew what had happened to make the dog that way, but people stopped asking. They just knew one thing. Stay away from Bruno. The kids had nicknames for him: the beast, the monster dog, the jail dog. Mothers warned their children not to get too close. Even grown men crossed to the other side of the road when passing that house. It didn't matter how long he'd been there, no one trusted that dog. Until one little girl changed everything. Her name was Lena. She was only 10 years old. Small for her age, with long dark hair always tied in a loose braid, and eyes that rarely moved, because Lena was blind. She lost her sight when she was just a toddler. A sudden illness took it from her. But if you asked anyone in the village, they'd tell you. Lena saw more than most people ever could. She was always smiling. Always listening. She recognized people by the sound of their footsteps, the rhythm of their voices, the way the wind changed when someone entered a room. She would stop and smell the flowers, feel the bark of trees, laugh at the warmth of the sun. Her world wasn't dark, it was filled with feeling. Everyone loved Lena. Not just because she was blind, but because she was kind. She greeted everyone by name. She remembered their birthdays. She asked how they were doing and actually listened to the answer. The baker gave her free pastries. The old shoemaker polished her shoes for fun. Kids fought to walk her home from school. But Lena's favorite thing in the world was animals. She said their hearts beat like music. She could sense their moods without ever seeing their faces. To her, they weren't scary. They were just waiting for someone to understand them. And though her parents always warned her to stay away from that one house with the big scary dog, Lena didn't feel fear when she heard Bruno bark. She felt pain. She didn't know his story yet. But deep inside, something told her. He wasn't angry. He was hurting. Bruno wasn't always feared. Once upon a time, he wore a vest. A K-9 officer, loyal, brave, respected. He had a partner. A young cop named Daniel, who treated Bruno like a brother. They trained together, ate together, fought crimes side by side. Bruno had saved lives, chased down criminals, protected families. But one night changed everything. A routine raid turned violent. Shots were fired. Daniel, his partner, his human, was hit. And Bruno? He didn't understand. He licked Daniel's face as the sirens wailed. Waited beside him for hours, refusing to leave. And when Daniel never came back, something inside Bruno broke. The department retired him. Too unstable. He bit another handler during training. He barked at anyone who came too close. No one wanted him. Except one man, Daniel's father. The old man brought Bruno home to the village. Built him a fenced yard. Gave him food, a place to sleep. But Bruno never healed. He spent his days growling, pacing, snapping at anyone who approached. The villagers saw a threat. A beast. A dangerous dog. They didn't know his story. They only saw his rage. No one dared get close. Until the day Lena did. It started like any other afternoon. The sun was high. Kids played near the fountain in the village square. Shopkeepers arranged their stalls. Lena sat on the bench near the bakery, humming to herself, holding her cane gently across her lap. And then, the barking. Loud. Ferocious. Closer than it should have been. People turned. A woman dropped her basket. A child screamed. Bruno. He was out. Somehow, the gate had come unlatched. The beast was loose. Villagers ran in every direction. Children were pulled inside homes. Men grabbed sticks and shouted warnings. The square emptied in seconds. Except for one person. Lena. She stood still. She didn't run. She didn't scream. She simply tilted her head, listening. Someone yelled, "Lena, move. He's coming." But she didn't. Instead, she took a step forward. Then another. People froze. Bruno's growl echoed through the air. His paws thudded against the stone path. He charged. Lena stretched out her arms. And then, she hugged him. Her tiny arms wrapped around his thick neck. Her cheek pressed gently into his fur. The entire village stood still. Eyes wide. Mouths open. Hearts pounding. Everyone braced for the worst. But what they saw, no one could have imagined. The moment Lena's arms wrapped around Bruno, everything stopped. The barking ceased. The growling faded. Bruno stood frozen. This massive, fearsome dog, who had once been trained to attack, suddenly lowered his head. People watched, unable to move. One man whispered, "He's going to hurt her." But someone else said, "Wait." Bruno didn't bite. He didn't bark. He whined. A soft, broken whimper, like a cry. His body trembled beneath Lena's touch. And then, slowly, carefully, he sat. And Lena? She smiled. She ran her hand along his head. Spoke softly to him. "It's okay," she said. "You're not scary. You're just sad." No one had ever spoken to him like that. Bruno laid his head on her shoulder, like a child collapsing after holding in tears for too long. A beast, yes, but one whose heart had never stopped grieving. And in that moment, in front of the entire village, Bruno chose peace. Not because he was trained. Not because someone ordered him. But because for the first time in years, someone saw him. Really saw him, not as a threat, but as a soul in pain. And all it took was the hug of a blind little girl. After that moment in the square, nothing was the same. Bruno, the beast, the monster dog, the terror of the village, was now following Lena around like a loyal shadow. Where she went, he went. To the market. to the schoolhouse, to the edge of the fields. He never barked, never growled, never snapped. He walked beside her calmly, protectively. Villagers would peek from behind doors just to see it, jaws dropped. At first, they thought it was a fluke. "He'll go back to being dangerous," they whispered. But he didn't. Bruno began changing. He let children approach. He let strangers pet him. He wagged his tail. One day, the baker dropped a bag of flour, and the loud bang made everyone jump. Except Bruno. He simply looked at Lena. And when she gently touched his head, he relaxed. The transformation was real. And the villagers? They changed too. They stopped calling him Beast. They started calling him Bruno. Some even said hello when they passed by. One child brought him a treat. Another tied a ribbon around his collar. All because one blind girl had looked past his rage and into his heart. Bruno wasn't just healed. He was becoming a healer. As Bruno and Lena's bond grew, something remarkable happened. The old man, Daniel's father, who had once kept to himself, began coming outside more often. He started sitting on the porch, watching the two together with a distant, teary smile. One morning, as Lena approached the house with Bruno by her side, the old man called out to her. "Lena," he said softly, holding something in his hand, "I think this belongs to him. And now, to you." It was a badge. Daniel's old police badge. Still shiny, still full of honor, still heavy with memories. The man knelt beside Bruno and gently clipped the badge to the dog's collar. "He wore this when he was brave," the man whispered. "And he's brave again, because of you." Lena placed her hand over the badge, fingers trembling. She didn't need to see it to understand its meaning. And Bruno? He stood tall. As if he knew. From that day on, Bruno wasn't just a companion. He was a protector again. Not of a city, but of a little girl. Not wearing a vest, but carrying a legacy. It was as if Daniel, the fallen officer, was somehow still watching, and smiling. Through Bruno, through Lena. His spirit lived on. Over time, the story of Lena and Bruno spread far beyond the village. People came from nearby towns just to catch a glimpse of the blind girl and the once feared dog who now walked beside her like a guardian angel. Lena never saw their stares. She never heard the gossip. All she knew was love. And Bruno? He never growled again. He aged gracefully, with Lena's hand always resting gently on his back. Years passed, seasons changed. But their bond remained unshakable. Unspoken. Unmatched. Until one quiet morning. Bruno didn't wake up. He had passed peacefully in his sleep, curled beside Lena's bed, his badge still clipped to his collar, his eyes soft, his heart full. The entire village mourned. Shops closed for the day. Children cried. Even the toughest men wiped their eyes. But Lena? She didn't cry that day. She stood up. Walked to the center of the village square with her cane. And said something no one ever forgot. He wasn't just a dog. He was proof that even the most broken souls can find peace, when they're given love. That one sentence changed the heart of the village forever. They began treating their animals with more kindness. They stopped judging people, or creatures, by their past. They remembered Bruno, not as the dog who once frightened them, but as the hero who reminded them. Everyone is worthy of healing. Everyone is worthy of love. And sometimes, all it takes to change the world is the gentle hug of a blind little girl.